Thank you all for joining us again today. I am so honored to have my guest on today as we dive even deeper into the conversation of how Black women can feel loved on in a world that tells them that white is the preference. And today I have with me Brialle Ringer, and she is a yoga instructor and nutritionalist. With plant-based medicine is her preferred nutritionalist style. And she also really has this belief that movement is medicine. She believes that if we really prioritize and focus on our pleasure, that actually can be our pathway to peace, which sounds really good to me. And I can't wait to hear more about that, and especially how that can be incorporated in the lives of Black women. So thank you. So honored for you showing up here and being in this space with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm so looking forward to sharing all the ways that I get loved up and heal on myself, to share that with other people, for them to have more tools in their toolkit of how they take care of themselves, heal themselves, and get free.
Thank you. And I'm loving your nice natural hair out right now.
We'll talk more about that later too. That has been totally a part of my healing journey.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Well, I'm just really curious about you for your own personal like history and life as a Black woman, and what that felt like you growing up, and love and feeling like you had self-love or feeling self-acceptance, and maybe what the struggles were for you and how you had to, learn to bring some of that more into your own personal reality.
Totally. So I am a multiracial Black woman. So my white side of the family on my mother's side, and then my Black side of the family on my father's side. And I spent most of my upbringing and my childhood with my mother's side of the family living in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, very rural, very white. I think the entire peninsula is like 3% Black. And so I was in a school for some time. It's a K through 12 school, and I remember being the only Black person in the entire kindergarten through senior high school, and so that was really challenging. I remember really trying to assimilate and to kind of dim my light, to dim my Blackness, to assimilate and to feel like I fit in. Really obsessed with straightening my hair. Like there's the whole decade, top of the decade, end of the decade photo challenge going on social media right now. And so I looked back at, 2009, and it's just like all the pictures in that time is like my hair is straight. And I remember relaxing it like as often as the package says that you can, as soon as those roots started to grow in, like relaxing my hair, always keeping it straightened with a flat iron. Eventually started wearing hair extensions as well. And so it's just like really conforming to Eurocentric beauty standards. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I really had to like reconcile with. And I really, when I think about what kicked off my journey of self-love and self-discovery, was decolonizing beauty standards and becoming comfortable with my brown skin and like my curly hair. Mm-hmm. And so when I stopped straightening my hair, which was probably about 5 years ago, like that really began this whole self-love journey of like, oh, like I don't have to do that to my hair. Like my natural hair is beautiful. My natural features are beautiful. Like I don't have to put SPF 90 on my skin when I go out into the sun because I'm worried about getting too black. Mm-hmm. And so that really began this whole journey of like loving myself and caring for myself. And that was also around the time I had moved away from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and went to school downstate near Detroit. Much larger Black population and just diverse community in general. And I got exposed to so much, so many different cultures, and like really learning about like the vastness of racism in our country and the way that wasn't whitewashed in the textbooks that I had, been taught in high school. And so, and also connecting more with my Black side of my family, like it just was a discovering of my roots, a discovering of myself, of a process of unlearning, and learning the truth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I can relate so much to your story in terms of, growing up and being in an environment where I definitely wasn't the only Black person in my school, but one of the very few. And my father happens to be Nigerian, and, I'm not biracial. So, there isn't any hiding, but people looked at me, and I remember people would just point out all of my Blackness, from the fact that my dad is from Nigeria, which was not something that I felt proud of back then. It was something that I hid, because if you're from Africa, then you're Black, like you're really Black, and that's supposedly just a really negative thing. And I remember being talked about in terms of my lips, and learning different techniques on how to make my lips smaller. Where now it's just, as simple as it is of wearing red lips, and like emphasizing the fullness of them was just something that I just did not do then. And even though it seemed something so trivial as, oh, it's just makeup application tools, obviously it's way deeper than that. It's me trying to hide parts of myself. And so when for you was in, the parts of you that you bring into your life right now, the different tools that you use to really embrace your self-love. Especially when I'm, thinking of young girls or even women who, you're seeing all these images, and, even your own family could say things to you. Like, I remember being told, don't stay out in the sun too long, you're gonna get dark. Like, that's a bad thing. You don't want to be darker than you are. You can't go lighter, but like, you definitely don't want to be darker. Like, that was the image that I kept hearing. And it's like, you're hearing that from your own family. And it's not always just from the media. So what have you learned to do to like find your own sovereignty, your own power?
Yes, yeah. So like I said, it really, really began with stopping straightening my hair and just like going through that uncomfortable process of like, I don't even know what to do with this. I don't even know what my hair texture is actually like, because I've been relaxing it for so long. And like that began a period of like, curiosity, like having some curiosity of like, okay, well, so this is what it's like. Well, what else can I do differently? How else can I go natural? Like using different products on my skin. Curious about this yoga thing. Like, let me move my body some more. Ooh, that really feels good. Let me continue to move towards what feels good to me. And so it gave me this curiosity of like stopping straightening my hair. It gave me curiosity in other areas of my life. It was like, oh, I grew up loving dancing. Why did I ever stop dancing? Like, why did I stop expressing myself in that way? So I started dancing again. I started like taking dance classes. I started hula hoop dancing. I got into yoga and developed like a consistent practice of doing it every single day. Started a meditation practice and started doing that every day. I went to therapy, and it just became this chain reaction of like, ooh, that feels good. I'm curious about that. Let me try that out. Ooh, yeah, I like that too. Like, that really resonates. That makes me feel good. And so I think about, that pleasure as a pathway to peace, like finding what feels good and like moving towards that and creating more space in your life for what feels good and is healing and provides you a space to like connect to your center, to connect to that inner voice of that's always gently guiding us to our divine purpose, our path, our highest selves. But sometimes we keep ourselves so busy that we don't even create the space to like get quiet enough to hear that inner voice. And so I really had to spend some time getting quiet, whether that was in meditation, yoga, dance, like that space that was just for me and in my self-care and my healing journey, creating that space for me to get quiet, to connect to what feels good to me, and what is my body, mind, heart, and spirit calling me to.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really called to yoga. I felt really called to veganism and plant-based nutrition. And I also felt really called to chakras. And so part of my healing was physical as well. I was experiencing recurrent physical issues with reproductive health. And I was like, what is going on here? I'm really young. What's happening here? And someone recommended me to check out the chakras and learn a little bit more about it. And they're like, when I'm experiencing something physically, I usually look at the chakras to see what's going on emotionally and spiritually that resonates with that physical. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And so I was like, oh, like I have this experience of sexual trauma that I had really never emotionally addressed and had really just repressed. And so when I realized, like, oh, reproductive health issues and sexual trauma, like that's very clearly connected. And the chakras gave me a system of understanding myself and healing myself. So when I did the practices of like eating orange colored foods that resonated with my sacral chakra, and meditations and moving my hips, like that hula hooping, that was literally because I needed to move my hips and like move through that stagnant energy that was like repressed and blocked and stagnant and trapped in my body. And so the movement practice became a pathway for me to have the medicine of movement, to move through stagnant energy in my life. And the chakras were a system for me to know what areas of my mind, body, and spirit needed a little bit of extra love, so that when I was feeling tense in my chest, I was like, okay, what's going on with my heart lately? When I feel those rumblings in my belly, it's like, am I giving my power away? Am I giving my power in a way that like is not serving me? My hips feel really tight. Like, have I been repressing my sensuality and like feeling a lot of shame? And so it chakras were a huge part of my healing, and now something that I help others facilitate their healing through.
Wow, powerful stuff. And I'm curious, like, what you feel about when there's like stuck energy in your body. Like, I'm imagining that, even just as you're walking around in the world, like just showing up in the world, like what would you say for someone who has maybe, some like repressed, a lot of stuck energy inside of their body that they're holding, and they haven't had the space or the know-how of how to like actually be with that.
Yeah.
Like for you, for the work that you do and your knowledge, like how do you imagine that person would show up in the world? Like how do they present themselves?
I will notice it just because I'm a yoga instructor. When I have someone who comes to my class, like I'll notice the way that they carry their shoulders. Like if someone physically shrinks themselves like this, and their shoulders are often kind of hunched and they're kind of like shrunk down, like this is connected to our throat chakra and then like also our heart. And so like you're literally shrinking yourself from like expressing, from being seen, from all of that. And so like when you create that openness, it's like, I'm showing up, I have a voice that needs to be heard. And so there's a different way that they carry themselves, like you literally shrinking yourself. Or the hips, like not a lot of mobility in the hips. Or when I'll say like, encircle your hips and find some flow, and they're like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. It's like, well, what's up with that? Like, it's okay to like connect to, it's safe to connect to your sensuality in a healthy way that like feels good, that honors your boundaries, that like honors consent. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that I'll notice in how people physically show up. And the thing is that like people might not even know that they're carrying that, and or connect to what's happening with them physically as they're moving through the yoga practice. But sometimes people will start to cry in the practice, and they're like, what's going on? Or a memory will suddenly come flooding to them. And it's like, because those emotions literally get trapped inside of our body. And sometimes it's not even our own. Like intergenerational trauma is literally wired in our DNA, but so is our healing. Our healing is also in our DNA. Those ancestral healing practices is also in our DNA. And so when we take the time to like physically move our bodies to release some of that stuck energy that is from our lifetimes of trauma and challenging experiences, and our ancestors' challenging experiences, I like to tell my students that when you heal yourself, you heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So you are literally liberating your lineage every time that you step onto the mat.
So true. So true. So powerful. And like I know you and I had talked like maybe a month ago, and with all that, like knowing that, when we heal ourselves in this like human existence, like who we are right now, it's not just for us, right? And it's like you said, for, 7 generations ahead and prior. So knowing that, and also knowing how, it's definitely getting better, I feel like, but there's still like a stigma when it comes to, seeking help or going inward, like in the Black community, whether that's therapy or whether that's learning about chakra systems or whether that's a plant-based diet. Like, what do you feel, could happen to shift some of that and bring more acceptance and more allowance of more of that to saturate our community?
Yeah. So something that's coming really present to me is the work of Adrienne Marie Brown, and she shares like a big one of her messages is like what we pay attention to grows, and
Mhm.
so where we put our attention and our focus is where we're going to continue to see those things manifest in our own lives and in the world. And so I really turn my attention to all of the progress that's happening, all of the healing that's happening, like all of the Black women that are out here killing it, like starting their own businesses, paving their own lanes, like highly educated, like really seeing a lot of Black women reclaiming African spirituality and African religious practices, like honoring ancestors, like setting up altars. And so I see a lot of that happening, and I know that there's still challenges to overcome. Like there's still challenges of just like having the time and the space and the resources to prioritize healing. And so I think that it's really helpful to be a model. And so for me, it's like it's how I show up in the world. Like who I am is the possibility of peace, transformation, and liberation, and I'm going to show up in all places, in all ways, as that in all of my interactions. And so it's like if I want to introduce someone to plant-based nutrition, well, I'm just going to cook a really delicious meal that it happens to be vegan and make it super flavorful and exciting and palatable, and that gets people excited, because again, it's like that pleasure. It activates like everyone likes good food, so let me do this way and share in a way that is enjoyable, that is fun, that is pleasureful. So good food is always a good way to connect people to veganism. As far as like healing goes, like modeling the transformation that I have felt, because I know that my personal transformation is integral to our collective liberation. And so showing people just the results that I've had in my life, like sharing how much joy I get in showing up on my mat, and how grounded and peaceful like I speak in all my interactions. And it's not just when I'm in my mat or on my mat.
Mhm.
It's in all the ways that I show up. And so I have people ask me often like, well, hold on, like you don't have like winter depression? And I'm like, no, this year like I was really intentional, like I rebuked the winter blues. And so I am like taking extra dance classes, I'm taking extra yoga classes, like I'm drinking my water every single day. And then I share when I do those things. I'm like, listen, y'all, I just did acro yoga and was flipped upside down and it was so fun. Like, you got to get out there and try new things, So whenever I'm doing these practices that are bringing me joy and are getting me closer to my peace and my purpose, I share that. I share that through conversations, through online, on Instagram and Facebook, in my in-person interactions. And so I just share really freely about the impact that my practices have had on my life. And that usually gets people curious, like, I want to heal. Like, I want to show up as like peaceful and grounded as you seem. Like, how did you get here? and I remind people all the time that like it's a journey. I've really spent the last 5+ years like in making my healing and my spiritual groundedness my priority. And
Mhm.
my time, money, resources, energy, all of it has gone into healing myself, loving myself, and knowing that that is what is going to get me closer to my highest self and aligning with the highest good of all beings.
Mm. I can feel all the devotion that you've had taken for yourself. I can feel that even through the online here, even though I'm not
Thank
in front of you. So it's like an embodiment. And so for
Exactly.
you, it's like I feel like what you're sharing is that for us as Black women, one way that we can help, shift this is by just being a living presence
Yeah.
of the work and the lessons and the healing that we all are a part of, because each and every single one of us are on the healing journey. And
Exactly.
embodying it and sharing it, right? Like share.
Yes.
Okay.
And another message that just got present to me is like the function of freedom is to free someone else. And so like once you get free, once you liberate yourself and on your path of healing yourself, it's just like, yeah, how many other people can you bring along on that journey? Like how many other people can you invite to join you in that practice? And you know, whether that is starting with your family and those people close to you or your couple of friends, and then continuing to grow that and grow that, because our lives are a microcosm of the world. And so may we decompose violence within ourselves before we ask it of the world, and like really practice that on ourselves, healing ourselves and being our best selves. And then like, okay, now how can I heal my family? Okay, now how can I heal my community? Okay, now how can we practice this on a global scale? And like starting small and like letting that just like take shape.
Mm, beautiful. And I know underneath this video, we'll have your links and your website and all the ways people can connect with you. But I'm also curious if I know earlier you were talking about, which is so true, all the different Black women who are showing up right now, teaching about our history of healing that we have within us. And I don't know if you have any books or any like other healers, teachers that, might be on the tip of your tongue that you would recommend for those who are like, man, all this sounds really good, but like, where do I go to like learn more? If you have anyone that you want to share, please do.
Absolutely. So for plant-based nutrition, I love to recommend my mentor, who is just a total boss. Her name is Lisa Smith, and she is like an incredible educator on plant-based nutrition and like getting people's lives right. And she specifically focuses on Black folks. So she offers a free platform called the Black Health Academy. And y'all need to go sign up right now. Go get this information. So that is one amazing resource for people who are looking to transform their physical health through plant-based nutrition. And then Adrienne Marie Brown is someone I mentioned earlier, and she does amazing work on, her most recent book is called Pleasure Activism. So that is such a juicy, amazing book. I love it. So if you need help prioritizing pleasure in your life, that's a great one. And she wrote another book called Emergent Strategy, another fantastic book about how our movements can really learn from nature. So that's another good one. And an organization that I really love that's coming present to me also is Led to Life, and that's led by a group of Black queer folks, and they work on taking tools of violence, so like guns, and melting them into shovels, and then they plant trees in areas that have been impacted by gun violence. And then they do these beautiful like heart-opening ceremonies of like honoring the land in these places that it has happened. So when I shared earlier of like, may we decompose violence within ourselves before we ask it of the world, that's a quote from their work. So those are three top recommendations that I have. And then for folks who want to learn more about the chakras, I'm your girl. So I do a 7-week series where I teach people how to activate their inner rainbow, and I pretty much take them on a journey of their chakras, starting from root, working all the way up to the crown chakra. And that is yoga, meditation, aromatherapy. It's discussion based, and so I really spend about an hour and a half with each of the sessions, and it's a 7-session long series that I do in person in the Detroit area. And so that's an offering that I really love facilitating for people, because it's like, as we're talking about the chakras and all the lessons that go along with each of them, with the root chakra, I might ask you, what's your relationship like with your mama? And, like, how were your needs met in early childhood? Or like, what emotions do you store in your hips? And how do you prioritize pleasure in your life? So these are some of the things that we explore together while we're also doing yoga, meditation. So I really enjoy facilitating that for folks.
So where would you say like oppression and like race issues, like in the chakra, like where?
Totally.
Like,
So I think that in 2 areas that really come to mind for me, it's like our root chakra, because intergenerational trauma, displacement, that like really impacts our groundedness. Like
Mhm.
not knowing where your ancestors came from, like that process of like trying to figure out like who your ancestors even are, and like the disconnection from Africa, and like where in Africa are my people from, you know, like that
Mhm.
intentional disconnection that has happened in our country, that definitely impacts our root chakra and our connection to land, our connection to our roots and our rootedness and our strength and our ancestors. um Unless, you know, and there is the power to intentionally do that reconnection of doing an ancestry test, and even without that, like creating an altar to honor your ancestors, and like call in messages from the divine to connect you back to your roots. And then I also think about oppression really impacting our heart chakra, because it's like it totally impacts your feelings, your feeling of love, like how worthy you feel of love, when you in a society have been told that, like, because of your identity, because of your race, your gender, all these different expressions and isms, that you are somehow less than,
Mhm.
that you are somehow not worthy of the same resources and rights in this society. And it's like, well, hold up, what? You know, like that definitely impacts like how worthy we feel of love and our ability to give and receive love.
Mhm. Mm. And just one other quick question. I'm just like getting even more curious around this. So with the chakras, so if you're feeling like your heart chakra especially, and how do you feel that like shows up? I know you said your ability to receive and give love,
Yes.
but is there like a couple tangible ways that you can talk?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, any chakra, when it's out of balance, it can be overactive or underactive. So, an overactive heart chakra might appear as like being really self sacrificing. Like, when someone violates your boundaries, you're like, ah, it's okay. You know, I just want to keep this person close to me, you know, like clinging on to love, even when it's not healthy and aligned. Um, and pouring all your love into other people or other things before you pour it into yourself. So you're giving and giving and giving it out in a way that isn't necessarily healthy. Or maybe jealousy, where you're, you know, again, that like really strong attachment in a way that's not necessarily healthy. And then for an underactive heart chakra, you might isolate yourself, feel really lonely, overly judgmental of other people. So those are some of the things to look for. And the things aside from oppression that might impact your heart chakra is also just like loss, whether that's like death or just like losing a different connection in your life, like a loss of a relationship, loss of a family member, grief, especially unprocessed grief when we haven't taken the time to like really heal from a loss. So those are some of the things that impact the heart chakra and how it shows up in our lives.
Mhm. Yeah, I think all that's going to be super helpful for people to really hear and to like just kind of tune in if they're especially if they're new to the chakra system
Yeah,
and just
thank
seeing
you.
how it really connects to their world. So I know you do your plant-based nutrition, that you have this program that I actually was really excited about joining. So the next one I want to be a part of, because I've been really looking at incorporating more of a plant-based diet for myself. I'm curious, like what you have to speak on in terms of how you feel the plant-based diet, can really help all people, but we're especially talking for two Black women. So anything that you can talk to around that, and why you do the work that you do around having a plant-based diet and teaching
Yeah,
others.
totally. So with plant-based nutrition, for me, it aligns in so many ways. Like it's the health tip. Like our top 10 to 15 killers in the United States are strongly correlated to overconsumption of meat and dairy. It's highly acidic. It creates an environment for disease to thrive in our bodies. It is high cholesterol. It causes a lot of issues health wise, really connected to our heart disease, which is like the number one killer in our society right now. So, on a health tip, there are so many, oh, and also breast cancer, which Black women in particular are at a higher risk in prevalence of. And for breast cancer, that is really strongly correlated to consumption of dairy and meat, which raises your estrogen levels, and your higher estrogen levels, the higher, the earlier you have a period, and your earlier period puts you at a higher risk for breast cancer. So all of these things kind of combine to create an environment of like a higher risk and prevalence of breast cancer, which is also um, more predominant in Black women. I mean, we have a lot of other stress factors that are happening in our lives around racism and all the other things that we're experiencing as Black women. And so it really just like stress combined with all the other factors creates an environment for higher prevalence of disease. And a plant-based diet can really reduce the risk of some of these diseases that we are more prevalent, that we have a higher prevalence of.
Mm-hmm.
So on the health tip, it's definitely really great for our optimal health, vitality, and longevity. And then for me, it's also around my ethics, like aligning with the liberation of all beings. I want freedom for myself and for my people, and I don't want to create suffering and murder and slaughter of another being. And so on the animal compassion side, I don't want to create the exact opposite of what I want for my life. Like I want peace for myself. I don't want to create the exact opposite for another being. In the 70 billion land animals that we slaughter every year. And then in terms of the environment, like I want to pass on a sustainable planet to the next generation. I'm really committed to that. I'm committed to us avoiding the climate crisis and like really having a sustainable planet. And animal agriculture is our number one contribution to environmental destruction and pollution, air pollution, water pollution, greenhouse gases, deforestation. Like animal agriculture is the number one culprit there. So for me, it's like aligning with my values and also like taking the best care of my health as I can so that I can be on this planet in my purpose and in my power for as long as I can. So that is why I practice plant-based nutrition and am a vegan, and why I'm passionate about sharing it with other people. And then back to the chakras too, it's like eating the rainbow heals your inner rainbow. And I call the chakras our inner rainbow. So eating colors that align with all the bright liveliness within us and in the plant world, those things are great for optimal overall holistic health.
And so you would say that eating a plant-based diet or more of a plant-based diet brings like can lower your stress and like even like maybe some anger or some like unresolved emotional stuff that maybe you're not quite sure what it is, but you're feeling it in your body, or you're feeling it in terms of your reactions out there to the world. Like, do you notice like with eating that way that it seems to, you know, bring about a different level of peace and harmony?
To be totally authentic, I did the Eat to Live 44-day plant-based nutrition program. That was my creation of helping people on their journey to learning about plant-based nutrition. And I did a webinar every week, and I also had a customized meal plan and a support group to take a journey for people and teaching them how to eat to live and how to eat this lifestyle and live this lifestyle. So I did 7 different webinars, and one of them I did was called The 4 Fundamentals of Health Beyond Nutrition. And so I talked about getting enough rest and community care and social support and mental health and mindset and exercise and play as a practice. That was my best webinar. That was the best one. And I didn't say nothing about nutrition. And so I'm really paying attention to like what works. You know, I'm in this very experimental phase of like, I know that plant-based nutrition is something I'm passionate about and practicing in my life, but the format I don't think was the right flow and the most authentic expression of like all that I have to offer. When I work with people on their chakras, like, you know, everyone is crying, you know, like I create a space of like people to go really deep into their healing. And I wasn't feeling like I was tapping into that in educating about plant-based nutrition. So I'm finding that I'm more of a inspirational, poetic speaker than a like hard facts kind of educator. And so I'm flowing more towards, you know, still sharing plant-based nutrition, but more. And so like, here's some delicious recipes. So I'm working on a cookbook that is actually on the chakras. So Eating the Rainbow to Heal Your Inner Rainbow is my cookbook that's about to be coming out, totally plant-based, how to eat foods for each of your chakras. And then focusing on my one-on-one private practice of educating people about their chakras through movement, discussion, and meditation.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I love the authenticity there. Like, just keep it real. I noticed for myself, one thing I've started to ask myself, like maybe 4 years ago, like I just noticed I was always craving certain types of food. And I started to just have like a different relationship with everything. Like, just really tuning in that everything is a relationship, whether that's my relationship to nature, to water,
Yes.
to food, to my body, to my emotions. And so I was opening up to my relationship to these cravings I was having. And so I started to even ask those cravings, like, why are you here? What are you showing up for? Like, what do you have to tell me? And I was surprised that I actually started to hear, it was like, oh, I started to tune in that when I'm craving salt, that's when I was trying to resist something.
Mm.
I didn't want to do something. So I was like craving salt as a way for a distraction. And I noticed when I was craving, something sweet, it was because of this emotion. And so it's just been very interesting. And as you said that, the plant-based diet for you works for you, and you like to share what you learn, and really like yummy recipes. And I feel like even just having a relationship with why you're eating, like just intentionality behind it, and not to say that you have to eat a certain way or don't have to eat a certain way, but even just asking self, like, why am I choosing to eat this? How do I feel after I'm eating this?
Yes.
How do I want to feel? Like, is this like connecting? And that's just one thing that I've noticed. I definitely still eat meat. I don't eat very much at all compared to what I used to. So it's just sometimes I can get the feeling like I feel like I need to eat some meat, and so maybe I'll eat it, but it's just a different reality and relationship to it than just choosing to eat that because that's what I was given as a 6-year-old, which is always like meat, 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 meat. But now it's like, why am I choosing to eat this?
Right, a more intentional and like self-aware connection to that. I really love that practice of like being curious about your cravings. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So I'm curious, as we get down to the end of the call here, if there's anything else that you're wanting to share, that you haven't shared so far that you feel like would be, just something that will be really powerful for others to hear on their journey to loving themselves and creating their own container of self-love.
Mm. Yeah, just finding what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many practices out there. There's so many modalities, and so like having curiosity to try new things and to see what works for you, to see what really resonates and like sets your soul on fire, and to continue with that. Like when you find that thing that like really feels like allows you to tap into your center, that makes you feel good and at home within yourself, like just find a way to do that every single day, and starting small. Like when I started a meditation or a yoga practice, it was like 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, and I've worked myself up to where this is like something that I spend an hour to 2 hours every single day, like really caring for myself. And so just start where you are, honor where you are in your journey, find what feels good to you, and just keep on doing that. And if you decide that like that really you find a passion for it and you want to share it with other people, like don't worry about there being an oversaturated market, about there's a lot of people already doing this type of work. You aren't in the market doing it, and you bring something unique to the table, and like you have something valuable. You have a valuable gift to offer to this world. You have been put here for a purpose, and really tap into those unique gifts and talents that you have to offer to others, because you have a story, a message, a resource, something within you that needs to be shared in the world. And so don't worry about competition. There is no competition. Don't worry about the market. Like you have something unique to offer, and just continue to like connect to that inner voice and trust it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So much appreciation for you and for
Thank
showing up today.
you.
And
Thank
all that
you so much
do.
for having me. I'm really grateful to have shared this conversation with you.
Mm. Beautiful. Much love to you.
Blessings.
Bye.